Sanbonani Imakosini, thank you so much for giving me your time today. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate you. Compliments of the season, guys. Happy New Year. I hope you all had a lovely festive season. I hope you crossed over safely. I hope you're feeling refreshed and renewed to start the year. I myself, not so much because I was working throughout the holidays, but I am trying to get in the right mindset for this jam packed year. I wanted to introduce you guys to the new format that I'm taking this year. As you know, I am a quote unquote healer who uses various methods. And so numerology is a big one that I've been told to add for a minute, and I've just sort of been like dragging my feet because of how much work is required in order for me to do it. But there's no running from the work anymore. So I'm going to be incorporating a lot more numerology this year, and I plan on making more videos, more audios. So the podcast is in full swing this year. Less focus on just the writing, and that's mostly because I'm a little too busy to be structuring essays, long essays at that. So I need to use all my resources, all the tools that are available for me. And so that starts with a podcast, and this podcast will be available on YouTube. But the idea is to have episodes get released on Patreon first, exclusive to all the members, and then they can later be available for YouTube. But not everything's going to be available on YouTube. So just make sure you subscribe, join the Patreon, and I have started an accountability group called Bright Spark Galaxy. And this group is just to help those of us who are struggling with discipline. You know, the Saturn year for me, especially because my Saturn was activated, it showed me a need to really get my shit together, to really structure everything properly in order to fulfill everything that I want to do. I need to have the structure, or I'm not going to go anywhere. And without that structure, I feel overwhelmed. So this is the reason for the group. I want us to be accountable. There's a mission, a vision, goals, and a routine. The group and the routine, they're all structured around the energies of this year, which I'll get into in a bit. But I structured it based on the energies of the year, and the group is designed to help us navigate the energies and grow spiritually, intellectually, and all sorts of things. So it's open to those who are like minded, and for that reason, it's not open access. You have to let me know if you want to join it, and then yeah, I'll send that link, and you'll have to request to join the group. So if you do have someone that is interested in joining, let them know. You can let me know, and then I correspond with that person, because I am very streets, guys. Streets, when it comes to the type of energies I want to let into my personal space. This is WhatsApp. This is a very intimate space, and so I am cautious about my battery. I'm cautious about who I'm letting in, and you have to be serious. So I think there's an emergency that's happening in my area. If you can hear those sirens, I apologize. But yeah, my point is, I will be exclusive about who can enter the group and who cannot. You do have to demonstrate commitment and dedication. If you are not interacting or participating in the group, then we kick you out. So it's better if we limit entrance to those who are really serious. I'm not trying to be anywhere with people who are not serious about their spiritual growth, and I'm really trying to be more serious this year. So that's the only kind of energy I'm letting in. Okay. Yeah, so if you want to join that group, hit me up. My contact details are all over social media. You can DM, PM, WhatsApp text, whatever. Okay, cool. So 2025, a much anticipated year for many reasons. I already wrote briefly about the energy of 2025. It's a 9 universal year in numerology, and that corresponds to the planet Mars. So I discussed a bit what energies the planet Mars comes with, and you're probably familiar with them already if you here. But if you do need a quick summary, Mars is the planet of action. It's the planet of power and control. It's the planet of leadership, attack and defense, willpower, independence, and surprisingly, the creative force, life force, vitality. Okay, so what does this mean? It means that this year we're going to see a lot more themes surrounding the 9 and Mars energy. 9 energy is closure, it is endings, it is humanitarian, sacrifice, willingness to serve, spiritual growth, spiritual awakening, wisdom. So, for a lot of us, we're going to be experiencing endings, but this is more on a collective level where certain things that have been happening over the years will come to an end this year. And some of those things will be mainly things from 2016, which is the last time we had a 9 universal year. And I discussed this a bit in the blog, but just to go over it for a little bit. In 2016, here in South Africa, we watched President Jacob Zuma, the former president. We watched him get convicted. Is that the right word? But basically, they said that he had violated the Constitution when he upgraded his home, and he added all those non-security upgrades, and it was because he used public funds to do that. So they found him guilty, and they called for him to step down, if I remember correctly. So, as you can see, this has to do with an influential figure. Mars is the planet of influential leaders. Influence, control, power, that's all Martian. And leadership is also Martian. So when we're looking at Mars energy, we also want to see how have our leaders been using the power they've been given. They become, they call to account for that. And that's pretty interesting considering the world events that are currently happening. So I can't wait to see how that plays out. Also in 2016, Donald Trump became president for the first time. That was controversial. Right? That was controversial because he's a pretty polarizing figure. So, and you guys remember what happened after that. There was the Capitol thing, people storming the Capitol. And that's a pretty Martian thing. It was pretty violent, So Mars is also that violent things, which includes protests, fighting for what you believe in, defending what you believe in. That includes protests. And so we're likely going to see quite a few protests this year. Mars is the planet of work, of doing. Okay, so when Mars gets to Virgo, it's going to oppose Saturn. And whenever Mars and Saturn oppose each other, there's like no work or stopping work. And that's when we can see those protests really happening. When Saturn and Mars are in opposition to each other, especially because it'll be in the sign of Virgo, which is the sign of labor. service industry. Then the Saturn Mars opposition is going to happen in August. In August. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we saw protests around that time asking the government to account, essentially. And because Saturn will be in Aries, that's, yeah, that's interesting. Saturn in Aries, because Aries has to do with rulers or people in power, and Saturn is like accountability, stability, structure, karma. I'm like shook for these leaders, but they deserve it. They deserve it because as a leader, you are meant to serve the people, and there's going to be a whole lot of accountability for that. You know, the nine energy is about serving and your sacrifice to serve. So I think it's going to be a lot of being accountable for whether you are serving in the way you're meant to. And on an individual level, that means those who have been called but are not listening, but are not doing, there's going to be serious consequences for that. Okay. Especially with the nodes also moving into Virgo Pisces, I do think we're going to see a lot about the service industry. If you have a business, this would be the year where I focus on making sure you get that customer service just right. You know, the how you treat people, making sure you're actually servicing people's needs. If you're an entrepreneur, that's my advice right there. Because there is a shift already to whether collectively are the people who are serving us, are they serving us in a way that is compassionate? And that includes making sure that we're providing good quality service. So that's everywhere, but especially in healthcare, good quality service. So if you are an entrepreneur, really make sure that your product is actually helping people, not harming them, and that your service is top notch. You know, if you can tweak it here and there, I'd do that. Yeah. So the next thing that I'm going to discuss on my blog is the underlying energies of the year. Okay, so that is the energy that is not as bold, but it's still under there. And oftentimes, this energy is the key to dealing with the stronger, bolder energy. Okay, so the underlying energy, we'll start with the planetary energy, is Jupiter. Okay, and Jupiter it fits so well here because it's also the planet of spiritual growth. It's also concerned with community and giving, generosity, and learning about other people's cultures, you know, foreign relations. So if we look at a global or collective level, then we can say, okay, that means globalization is getting worse this year. But like, how much worse can it get? But again, it could really get worse. And I feel that it will. And what I mean by that is that I think there will be these advancements in technology that make it even easier or make it feel even more like a global village. You know, ease of communication, travel, things in that area that boost foreign relations or boost or progress globalization. Again, travel is ruled by Jupiter, and so travel comes into focus. We start the year off with Saturn and Jupiter in hard aspect, and that was from the holiday season. They've been in hard aspect since the holiday season. And so when Saturn and Jupiter in hard aspect to each other, it makes travel difficult. Delays, restrictions, being stuck in places, not being able to move, you know, and we saw so many airports like complete standstill. So traveling was probably a nightmare this holiday season, especially with the Mercury retrograde. So we start the year off with this energy as well. Trouble traveling. So if you're going, you're traveling back, just make sure you have all those extra time, extra resources, extra money, plan Bs. Make sure you don't put yourself in a tight spot. Okay. So with these tensions, I think they're going to largely influence what's going to come when Jupiter is in Cancer. Okay. When Jupiter is in Cancer, it will still, on some level, square Saturn. But then Saturn's going to go back into Pisces, and then there'll be a trine between them. So Saturn will go back into Pisces later in the year around September. When there's a trine, it's an opportunity to improve things. Okay, and so I think that if we've got people who are willing to do the work, they can see these challenges and then implement certain policies later on in the year in order to assist with that. What I also think is that there could be border issues with traveling across borders, or people maybe forcefully entering through the borders. But it's significant. It's a significant year for foreign travel, for international travel, and we'll see how that plays out. But this Jupiter energy is very much adding onto the community or the communal energy of it all. Jupiter is not about what I want, but it's about us coming together with a shared goal in order to serve our community better. And so our leaders will certainly be forced to think about the collective, to think about the collective needs and do something about it, because that's something they should be doing already. But there's a bigger focus on humanitarian issues this year. Okay. The other underlying energy is the energy of 3, and that's the energy of creative expression, communication, and completion. The 3 is one of my favorite numbers. I like the whole completion idea. The triangle, it's got 3 sides, it's got 3 corners, and the triangle is one of the most secure shapes in nature. Almost every secure structure has a triangle to help support it there. So I like the energy of creating, the energy of communication being this stable, supportive structure. And I think that says a lot about what we need to tap into this year. So the communication is not just between us as people here in the world, even though that's important, because if we're talking about collective needs, we're talking about community, then we need to have good communication within the community. But besides that, the 3 and 9 are about communicating and learning. Ne? So we're also communicating with the higher beings, and we are accessing knowledge from them, from the divine. And that is the interplay between the 3 and the 9. The 9 wants us to grow our spiritual knowledge, but we can only do that by choosing to tap in to the divine energy, to the divine source, to divine knowledge. We can only do that through this creative force. And the creative force is called many things. And we can access it in many ways. Okay, you access it when you are creating something artistic, you access it when you're meditating, you access it when you're doing that spiritual work to connect with your guides. So I don't want you to ever look down on the creative energy. That is my favorite energy ever. So if you are a creative, create. If you're a creative with gifts, create with the intention of connecting to a higher power and letting it communicate with you. Okay. Now, there are a bunch of other symbolisms that are associated with these energies that I spoke about: Mars, Jupiter, 9, and 3. And these symbolisms, we can draw on them. Symbolism, whatever. We can draw on the symbols about to help anchor the energy, to help us infuse the energy into our lives so it's not too much for us to bear. Before I get into that, I want to ensure that you guys are aware that regardless of what I'm talking about, all this collective energy, what matters most in your life are your personal energies. What matters most, say it again, are your personal energies. So do not forget to check your annual perfections and your solar return chart, your own personal year ahead. So there's a universal there's universal energies in numerology, and there's also personal ones. So the same way we got a universal year number, you can get a personal year number. Okay? If you don't know how to do that, you can hit me up and we'll get into that. Okay, so what you want to do is make sure that you know your personal numerological chart. That includes your year, your personal year, but also the personal numerological chart that you were born with. It's almost like a birth chart, but the numerological chart is just numbers. Okay, so if you don't know that, don't worry. I am doing a whole series on numerology and getting you started on learning your own numerological chart. And I'll be offering some numerology readings in the future. So don't fret. Okay. But what's important with knowing your personal chart is that you know what energies you are lacking, what energies you have an abundance of, so that you know what it is you're going to struggle with or what's going to be okay for you. You also don't want to compound energy that isn't exactly positive in your life. So, for example, it's a Mars year, right? I want to immediately check, where's Mars in my chart? Is Mars positive or negative for me in my chart? So, if you were born during the day, then Mars, sorry, is not your friend. If you were born at night, then Mars becomes a little more constructive, but it becomes like the mean friend or the friend that gives you tough love. It's challenging, but more in a constructive way than it is in a day chart where it's just destructive. Okay. But again, it matters the condition that Mars is in your chart. By condition, I mean what house is it in, what sign is it in, what aspects is it experiencing, because all of that is going to determine whether you have Mars in good condition or not, and that will affect how Mars affects you. Okay? I personally don't have a very well placed Mars. It's in Libra, so that's not great, but it's in the first house, so that's great. It's conjunct Rahu, or the North Node, and so that's that can be both good and bad depending on who you ask. But yeah, so there's that. And then you also want to check, what is Mars ruling in your chart. For me, Mars rules my second house, Scorpio and Aries. Check the Aries and Scorpio houses in your chart. They will have a subtle activation this year. Then you want to do the same thing for Jupiter. You check where's Jupiter, the condition of Jupiter. If you're in a day chart, if you have a day chart, then Jupiter is good. If you have a night chart, then Jupiter isn't as good as it could be. Okay, it's more tempered in how it can provide for you. Okay, regardless, you check where's Jupiter, what condition is Jupiter in, and where are Sagittarius and Pisces in your chart. And then for this year especially, where is Cancer in your chart, because Jupiter is going to move into Cancer this year, and that's going to be significant. Okay. The next thing you want to check, now this is just my own personal technique, is your 3rd house and 9th house. You want to check that. So remember, these are just subtle energy underlying for you personally. Unless one of these is activated for you this year. Now, what do I mean by that? So, if you're not familiar, there's a technique called annual perfections. You want to check what perfection year are you in now. Okay? So, let's take a look at a perfections wheel. Okay? You check your age. You check which house is your age falling in this year. Okay, so I am 29 this year, I'm 29 right now, which means I'm in a 6th house perfection year. In August, I turn 30, and that'll put me in a 7th house perfection year. Okay, so once you know what perfection year you're in, you want to check your birth chart. Okay, check your birth chart for what zodiac sign is in that house. Okay, so personally, in the 6th house, I have Pisces in the 6th house. And so I am in a Pisces perfection year with Saturn activated. Last year was a Saturn ruled year, which means I felt the Saturn very strongly. Okay, so this year, it's a Mars year and a Jupiter year. There's Mars in my 1st house, Jupiter in my 3rd house, and you can see Scorpio, Sagittarius, that's 2nd house, 3rd house, Pisces is 6th house, Aries is 7th house. So these are the underlying energies for me. But my annual perfection for this year, I go into a 7th house Mars year, a 7th house Aries year, which means my Mars will now be activated. So everyone who's in an Aries or Scorpio perfection year will have Mars activated this year. And that's going to make it very significant. You will feel the shift immediately after your birthday. So what that means is that if you're a day chart, of course, it's going to be a little tougher. Okay? And if you don't have Mars ruling your year this year, consider yourself lucky. Because Mars is doing all sorts of crazy things this year. It's retrograde in Cancer, which is the sign of fall. And, well, right now it's in Leo, but it's going into Cancer tomorrow. And so we're going to feel very lethargic, for one, with Mars in Cancer, because that's a sign of its fall. So Mars in Cancer can't do what it really wants to do. It can't be openly confrontational. It can't openly fight and attack. It can't act because it's low energy, low vitality. So take it easy for the next couple of weeks. Mars is only leaving Cancer like March. So it's going to be quite a few weeks of lethargy, but it'll be okay. And a story from last year, when Mars was in Cancer, is last September, October, November. That's when Mars was in Cancer. Something from then is going to come back over these next couple of weeks, demanding your attention. So for me personally, I have to deal with a bullying issue at my kids' school. So I'm not looking forward to that. But yeah, as you can see, March, Mars is still in Cancer. So from Monday the 6th of January until March, we're going to have Mars in Cancer. So pace yourself. Don't try and do too much because it's the beginning of the year. We're very low energy. The other thing with Mars is that it has to do with explosions and fires and accidents and injuries and all those not so lovely things. In April, when Mars gains full strength, that might not be such a a fun time, especially because for the first week or so before it transitions and after it transitions, it's going to be opposing Pluto. So Mars Pluto opposition is like a power struggle. Pluto likes to impose and control and press down, and Mars doesn't really like having someone try to control it. Mars is independent. It likes to lead and take action. So this is where we see the friction, and so I think some conflict with leaders, conflict with power, people wanting their independence around April. And we might even feel a push and pull. We're likely to feel a push and pull between what we actually want to do and what we're capable of doing. But also, on the other hand, we will be a little more unapologetic about what it is that we know needs to be done. So just hold on until Mars gains a little bit of dignity again. And we should see some movement around April. So I feel it's a slow-ish start to the year with Mars and Cancer. I don't think it moves that fast at all. Very slow to move and indecisive, doesn't know what to do. So if you're feeling this energy, just try to remember that it's not you, it's not the situation, it's not whatever, it's the cosmic energies. And if you can just wait it out until April, that'll be good. So Mars and Cancer, it's more about defending than attacking, protecting. And sometimes that could make us a bit overly sensitive, touchy feely, because you feeling overprotective of yourself. So that's something to watch out for. But it could also be like needing to defend someone else, or feeling like you have to step in and defend someone else, someone you feel particularly attached to. That could be a family member or not. Okay, so that's just some of the energy we're starting with. And we're starting with Jupiter retrograde. So we're not really going to see the optimism and the abundance until after Jupiter has stationed direct. But we'll get into the transits in a different segment. Okay. So now you see the energies that we're working with this year. So just to go back to 2016, the Brexit referendum held in June marked a monumental decision. That's when the UK voted to leave the EU. So it's like asserting their independence. And then the ANC lost the metros, Joburg and Tshwane. It lost the metros to the DA. So that's like a loss of power because people were trying to hold them accountable, right? And then the iconic Fees Must Fall protests in October. Students fighting for what they believe in. So when you look at the past, it's like, oh my gosh, that was a lot. That was very eventful, but it's necessary regardless. Regardless, it's necessary. Mars is the fire that we hate but need. Sometimes you just need that fire under your ass, and you see yourself getting through loads of work that you just didn't have the energy to get through. So I always say I have a love-hate relationship with Mars because of that. So major transits that are happening this year. We've got a final eclipse in Aries. We've got 3 Mercury retrogrades in fire signs, which is significant because the element of the year is fire. And then we've got Venus retrograde in Aries, fire sign. The nodes shift into the Virgo Pisces axes. Jupiter enters Cancer. Saturn enters Aries. Neptune enters Aries. And then Saturn and Neptune conjoin in Aries. And then we've got Uranus in Gemini. So we've got so much fire energy. And then we've got the air energy that comes from Aquarius and Gemini. And fire and air together, they urge each other on. This is a monumental year. There's a whole lot of Aries energy, which is fire energy, and we're dealing with the fire year. And fire, the element of fire is about that life force, the creative force, the vitality. So once the people really start feeling their energy back, it really might be trouble for these leaders, trouble for those people who've been abusing their power. And I can't help but be excited for that and sad for lives that are always lost when things have to come to violence and war and whatnot. But it's a necessary shift. It's a necessary shift that we need to tip the scales back into the favor of humanity and away from the greedy billionaires. As I mentioned before, there are other symbols that we can use to help anchor the energy that we're dealing with. And I'm going to go through these symbols now. First things first, what do I mean when I say symbol? What do I mean by these are the symbols for the year? So when we say that this is a Mars year, this is a 9 year, those are just symbols to help us understand the type of energy we'll be navigating in that period of time. So there are other symbols. They're not just numerological or astrological. There are other symbols, shapes, animals, tarot cards. You can find symbolism in almost anything. So I've decided to take this approach where I look at a variety of symbols in order for us to really get down to the crux of the energy that's going on. There are a bunch of groups, a bunch of cultures with their own different beliefs, but you'll be surprised how many overlaps there are between symbolisms and between the periods when they say these symbols are active. Like, for example, in numerology, it's a 9 year. And in the Chinese zodiac, it's going to be a snake year. And one of the animals that are associated with the number 9 is the snake. So, what are the chances that those two symbols, seemingly unrelated, are overlapping? So, I think this is an interesting way to look at things. So, when I say these are the symbols for the year, these are the main symbols. There's always underlying energy in everything. As you can imagine, a birth chart has 12 sections and like 10 different planets and then objects and points and etc. You get my point. So with with energetic symbols, it's no different. There's going to be a number of them, a variety of them. What we need to do is find the common thread, which is basically my life mission, to find the universal truth. So I want to see the common thread amongst all these symbols. The main themes, the main symbols, they just tell us the color of the year. I don't know how to explain that, but they give us the main themes of the year. This is what we're going to be dealing with. This is the energy we're going to see an increase of. Okay, and if it's a Mars year and we're seeing an increase in drive and passion, that could go really well or not, right? Because passion can easily turn into aggression and violence. Okay, so this is just the energy in the year. But how do we navigate? How do we deal with it? How do we get past it? How do we get through it? How do we navigate? And that's where the underlying energies come in for me. Okay, I'm ngabanye. I don't know what they do. I'm not talking about nobody else and how they practice. This is me. Okay, all right. So the underlying energies are the keys to navigating the bigger energies. And what are the underlying energies for this year? Stay tuned. Stay tuned, stay tuned. Okay, so the 9, the color gold, Mars, and the snake are the main themes for the year. And what does this mean? We've already gone through the number 9 on the blog. We also spoke a little bit about the animal, which is the snake, and how that symbolizes renewal and life cycles, because you know how the snake sheds its skin, releases the old stuff to be reborn. So that's a story of rebirth. That's a story of endings and beginnings. And it fits very well with the number 9, because the 9 is the last number before we go back to the 1. Underlying 3 energy talks about creativity and communication being the goal, basically. And the 3 is about stability and support. The triangle is the most stable, the structure, occurring in nature. That might be a lie, don't quote me. But look around in architecture, the triangle is everywhere. And that speaks to the stability of 3. Okay, 3 is a crowd, 3 is a group. When there's 2 of you, that's a duet, right? That's a 2. That's like 2 people. But when they say, when 3 or more are gathered, things really start to move. And again, the 9 has to do with communities. So I'm really excited to see these communities forming this year, small branches of people coming together. In fact, they've been coming together for a while, but I think this year it's really going to peak with people finding their people, especially as the nodes go into Pisces. So I put together a little something to visualize the symbols for the year. We've got the number 9, Mars, Pisces, fire, gold, the solar plexus chakra, the hermit, the enneagram, and the snake. Okay, so I went through the 9, the snake, Mars, and fire. So now I want to talk a little bit about the enneagram, and that's the symbol here. That's the shape for the year. Okay, so the enneagram composes of a circle, a triangle, and some hexagonal shape there, right? So this means that it has the energy of all of these shapes. The circle representing oneness, unity, and completion. And does that not mirror the 9 energy? And then we've got the triangle that has to do with balance, stability, creativity, but also the law of 3s that says that all phenomena happens as a result of an interplay of 3 forces, or as a result of 3 forces acting upon each other: the active force, the receptive force, and the neutralizing force. Okay. So the active force is basically the beginning. The receptive force is what receives it, balances it, but then the neutralizing force harmonizes these opposites. The Enneagram is the symbol for the year, again, main symbol, but the underlying symbols, there are still underlying symbols that come with the Enneagram, which are the triangle, the circle, and the hexagon. Okay. The other symbol we've got is the solar plexus chakra that tells us again about personal power. It tells us about creativity. It tells us about life force and vitality. The other symbol we have here is Pisces. It's one of my favorites to talk about, so I'm not going to say much about it now, because we're going to talk a lot about Pisces when we're talking about the transits. There's like insane Pisces energy this year with the node moving into Pisces very soon, actually. But Pisces essentially is also about sacrifice, self-sacrifice, and sometimes doing too much and ending up like completely overstepping your own boundaries and someone else's boundaries. But it's also about merging oneness with the spirit. So you guys thought abantu bayathwasa before. You guys thought many people were having callings before. You guys thought it was fashion before. Just wait. Just wait until the nodes go back into Pisces. And you're going to see the spiritual movement, the spiritual community, the mindfulness movement growing some more. Sorry, guys. My partner just came home from work. But yeah, anyway. So we know Pisces. We understand the Piscean energy, right? Now let's look at gold, the esoteric symbolism of the color gold. The color gold is associated with alchemy. Again, that's transformation. That's renewal. It's also associated with spiritual awakening, enlightenment, high forms of consciousness, wisdom, purity, perfection, divine masculine energy, abundance and prosperity, sacred royalty and divinity, and it's associated with the sun. Terms such as the golden age to describe a utopia era of spiritual harmony. So in some way it's like I guess trying to return to that era of spiritual harmony and prosperity. Even in Christianity, gold is used to represent God's glory and the eternal light of heaven. So gold is tied to divine light. It's tied to transformation and spiritual enlightenment. And when I read divine light, I couldn't help but think of, you know how divine light is depicted in movies and stuff. It's some lights shining from the skies, and it's just like, there's a light down there. But that's also how aliens are depicted, and there's been talk of alien life. And I'm just thinking about how the nine is like endings, and and if and when aliens decide to show their face this year, that would certainly be the end of life as we know it. That would certainly be awakening to a certain reality, which is essentially what spiritual awakening is. So that's what we're doing this year. We're going to see things in a different light where it's suddenly like, wait a minute, why have I, what, let's, and feel the urge to act immediately. But the dark side of that energy is being impulsive and reckless because you want to act now. So I urge you to take your time. Take your time. Don't be like fire. Be controlled fire. Don't be a wildfire. Controlled fire. Now, the other symbol is the hermit. And this one's interesting. I was talking to a friend about it. Shout out to Narala Healing. She's the tarot girl that I know. So she's my tarot reference. And we were talking about the hermit. And the hermit is the ninth card, right? And it's also the card of going within in order to find answers, in order to connect to a higher source, in order to gain that wisdom and come out stronger, in order to become renewed. So the underlying energies are the key, remember, to navigating the main energies. So think of them as the boat, the lifeboat, helping us sail the ocean. And the underlying energies for this year are tying in various traditions. So it's going to look like it's a lot, but we are looking for the common threads. Okay. So starting with the numbers and the planets, the underlying energy there, Jupiter and the number 3. Okay. So if you know numerology, you already know that 3 goes into, if you know maths at all, you know 3 goes into 9. But if you know numerology, you know that that is also significant in its own. And so the energies of the 3s are energies that we really need to align ourselves with, tap into, in order to help us tap into the 9s. Okay, so we're not abandoning the 9s, but we're using the 3 to anchor the 9. So the 3 represents community again, but more so communication and creativity and creative expression, self-expression, right? So this brings me back to that point about in a community. You can't form a community where there is no communication. You can't form a community with people who refuse to be honest about their situation, because a community is meant to assist you with where you are, but you also assist the community. So it's a give and take. When we say community, it's not just you winning. It's not just people coming over to help when you need it. It's not just doing things that you want or like. It's being inconvenienced sometimes because that person is your family. Right? That's essentially what community should boil down to. And in order for that to be successful, you need the energies of the three. You need to honestly express yourself, but honesty also must be skilled. You need to be able to navigate communication well. So that's a huge theme. And it's very interesting when we're talking communication. Oh, three is also associated with travel. 3 and 9 associated with travel. And the in astrology we have Uranus moving into Gemini this year. And this transit is significant because Uranus is like the genius brainchild of the zodiac. So it invents crazy things that no one has thought about. And life is suddenly never the same again. So I expect, of course, education to be changed because those are things that are associated with Gemini. So education, travel, communication. So in the Astrology podcast, they mentioned how they were expecting a new social media to pop up. And Uranus transits are about 7 years. So I'm excited to see what the next 7 years are bringing forth. But as I mentioned, this will affect education as well. So I think we're going to see a lot more AI use in education, particularly in the lower lower education. You wouldn't believe how much AI has already integrated in the education sector. So I feel now it's going to be something that's directly affecting the students. But also I think there's going to be developments and innovations regarding how we learn. Yeah, but we're not talking about Uranus and Gemini. But the fact is that there's going to be advancements or focus on this. And so if you have the chance to improve your communication skills, that is a sign from the universe. Take it and run. And use those opportunities to improve. This year is all about growth, leading me to the next underlying energy that we can rely on is Jupiter. Jupiter is the other underlying energy, and Jupiter, it is the planet of expansion. Sorry, regardless of what people say, it is associated with growth and abundance and prosperity. There can be temperament with Jupiter. It's not really there with extremes. So I find that it's more slow growth when it comes to Jupiter. So this year, I think that is something that we need to remind ourselves to pace our growth, but take the action. We need to act, but make sure it's paced out. And we need to trust in the steps. Faith without works is dead. So this is what I think about when I think of Jupiter and Mars together. Mars being work, action, doing. Jupiter being faith. Needs to go together. If you really believe, then do something. Okay, we're ending toxic cycles this year. Okay. If you ever wanted to do it, this is the year to do it. Okay. So now looking at the animal symbolism, we spoke about the snake, but we also have the elephant, owl, scorpion, eagle, and the hawk. I went through these on the blog, just what they mean. But the elephant symbolizing wisdom, the hawk, vision and clarity, the eagle, precision, focus, the scorpion, defending yourself, protection. The owl is also a symbol of wisdom and spiritual knowledge. So again, these are just echoes of the same themes that we've been talking about. If you're drawn to one of these symbols, or you have it as a token or spirit animal or whatever it comes to you in your dreams, then I'd pay attention. And if you're running from your gifts, I'd stop doing that, because this is the time to embody this energy. It's the time to call upon it. What else do we know about these animals, right? We know the snake always sheds its old skin. We can take that lesson. We can decide that, you know what, I want to start again. Not happy with what's going on. I want to change. And you shed your old stuff and you continue. The elephant symbolizing wisdom, compassion, humanitarianism. The elephant doesn't forget. And so I think that's very important when we're in the 9 year, to remember where we come from, remember the struggles, remember our goals, what it is that we've been trying to do over the past 9 years. How close are we? And what can we do differently? In extending compassion and empathy to others. Okay, the owl as well, spiritual insight. So here we've got this symbol urging us again to grow our gifts, to focus on improving our intuition. So I highly recommend choosing an animal and then researching more about it. I guarantee that you will find some insight for your life that is going to be valuable advice for you to keep. How to use this energy, how to draw upon it. If this symbol is something that is benevolent in your life, it's not an animal that's harmed you in a dream or something, or you just have beef with it, I'd call upon it. Call upon the energy of that symbol. The phoenix is about rising from the ashes. So if you're feeling really, really down, maybe it's time for you to print a giant symbol of a phoenix and use it as your motivation every day. Some people get called to get tattoos. If you're okay with something that permanent, and you've done your research regarding tattoo placement and symbolism, perhaps that's something that you could do, But essentially, the idea is for us to draw in the energy of these animals. And I think how I'm going to do it is, I think I'm going to paint, one of them and maybe hang it up in my room or something. And yeah, I can post and show you guys how I have decided to incorporate my animal symbolism. I might put it on my vision board. We'll see. Then we've got the other shapes that are underlying in this energy. So I already incorporate shapes into my daily life. It matters in how I buy my jewelry, how I buy my clothing. So I take into consideration the energy that I want to enhance. So remember what I said about knowing your own chart and knowing whether you have too much 9, and so adding more 9 can maybe you can either not feel a difference, or it can really tip things over the scale and make everything 100 times worse. So you really want to trade carefully. I always suggest starting slowly. Don't do anything permanent. Just try and then jot down what you do. So for example, if you're wearing triangle earrings, for example, jot down how your day goes. Take a look at the transits. just to see what's going on, understand how the symbols work for you. If this is not something that you are comfortable with, that's fine. But I personally, even when you see rings, engagement rings, wedding rings, they're circular. And what did I say circles represent? Circles represent unity and oneness and wholeness. And so exchanging circles with each other has that binding symbolism. So we're already using these symbols. So I don't want you to look, oh my God, and see an Enneagram and think, oh my God, this is demonic. Oh my God. No. No. But again, you don't have to use it. You already have certain symbols in your life. You can see how that works out for you. So, for example, there's the cross here. Maybe some of you already wear your rosemaries or whatever it is, rosaries. Maybe you wear your rosary already. So just know that it's going to be amplifying the energy. And if things seem to just not be going right, take it off for a little bit and see if things improve. Okay, so that's my advice with incorporating the symbolisms your into your life this year. I was also thinking about how it's a Mars ruled year, and so health wise, there's gonna be inflammation issues, fevers, headaches, and of course, broken things, an increase of in those issues, which is a bit concerning when you also see the headlines and you see flus making headlines, viruses, but think about how you can make sure that in your diet you are eating foods that are not inflammatory. You are taking care of your body. That's already a way of working with these symbols. It's a Mars, yeah? You already know people are going to be aggressive. So it's not the year to be getting into fights. It's not the year to be unnecessarily getting into fights, just walk away. Sometimes it's really not worth it. You know that it's a good year to take steps towards your goals. It's a Mars year. Take action. Do the things that you've been saying you want to do. No more planning, it's doing. Close the cycle of procrastination. Close the cycle of inaction. Close the cycle of self-doubt and choose to let go. Be reborn into the businesswoman, the musician, the whatever that you want to be. Okay, the internet is literally the world at your fingertips. It brings everything right to your phone. That's the energy that we're working with for the year. I haven't listed everything you can do because how much time would that take? So just think of what I said and see how you can apply this to your life. Very important to do what? Take care of your health, take some action, and close out those cycles. That's what we're doing this year. Okay, so thank you again for joining me. Please like, share, and subscribe. Bye.